Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Live with Rye. I'm your host, Rye, and I am so thrilled that you are joining me today. Before we begin, I just want to thank you for your continued love and support for the show Live with Rye. It has meant so much to me these last few months, and I truly cannot thank you enough. I am so humbled by it. Before we begin, I do have a favor to ask of you. If you're joining us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you never miss an episode of Live with Rye. Also, if you subscribe, hit that alert button so you never miss an update of what I do on my channel. And if you're joining us on Facebook, hit that thumbs up or give us a heart so I know that you're watching. Also, be sure to follow me across social media. I'm at Rye Myers on Rye_Myers on Instagram. I just changed it, so I'm getting used to saying that. Rye_Myers on Instagram and at Rye the News Guy on Facebook and Twitter. I love hearing from you, and let's continue this conversation. So please follow me, and I will follow you back. And you'll also see my website scrolling across the bottom of the screen, ryeTheNewsGuy.com. Head on over there to rewatch all episodes of Live with Rye and to see all of my other exclusive content, including the launch of my production company, Rye Entertainment. Let's collaborate and check out Rye Entertainment while you're on my website. You'll also see my Venmo handle scrolling across the bottom of the screen as well. If you are so inclined, I would love if you considered supporting the show Live with Rye on the platform, ryeTheNewsGuy.com. Anything you can give would be so appreciated. Even your kind words, which most of you have given, means more than you will ever know. And with that, let's get into today's show. Help me welcome my very special guest, Dr. Alisa Hurwitz. Hello.
Hello, Ryan.
Also known as the Dr. Drama.
AKA, yes.
AKA Dr. Drama. B-Way Show says hello. She says, yay. Right.
Oh, hey, show.
So let's get into this. Thank you for doing this. I think this is such an important episode, and I'm so happy to finally be able to talk to you. We have talked often, and I remember our chat last year at BroadwayCon, just so special, but I'm happy and excited to sort of digest and talk about mental health and theater, and especially I'm such a big proponent of mental health, so I think it's important. How can we continue, during the pandemic, which has been so devastating and detrimental, how important is it to take care of our mental health during this time, and what is one or two things we can do to stay on top of it?
Yeah, great question. And first of all, thank you for having me, Ryan. I'm honored to be talking with you. When I agree. Talking about mental health, destigmatizing conversations around mental health is so important. And having this conversation today with you is just, another part of that. I want to give a context to my answer, if that's okay, which is that when we talk about mental health, I think it's so, for me, I prefer to use the term mental health as opposed to only focusing on kind of, what ails us, when we talk about mental illness, which is important too. But mental health refers to that whole continuum. And so when we talk about our physical health, we're not only talking about when we have a broken leg, right? We're also talking about like what our body does, to function for us. And the same is true for our mental health. And I also think that talking about it as something that, is that whole range helps people also feel more comfortable maybe around conversations about it. Because we are more than just the sum of our problems. We're more than that. Now, so, what can we do during the pandemic? The first thing, and if you remember back to your psychology 101 in college, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, safety is at the bottom. So right now, if all you're doing today is surviving, that's enough, because we may be working from home, but we're working from home while surviving a pandemic, a global pandemic. We may be doing school from home. We're doing school from home while we're surviving a global pandemic. If that's what you can accomplish today, surviving, that's enough. If there's, if you have a little bit more available besides that, then a couple of things that you can do. Exercise. Exercise is as effective as medication for mild to moderate depression. Mm-hmm. It releases neurotransmitters that, that make us feel content and happy. It's also helpful for anxiety as well. And so any way that you can move your body for 30 to 40 minutes of sustained exercise will help your mood in the short term and the long term. And the other thing I would say that's actually very accessible is drink more water. When we are underhydrated, we can have physiological symptoms that mimic anxiety. And if you've had anxiety before, which most of us, have had some experience with that, our brain interprets that as, oh, when I felt anxious, my heart was racing. My heart is racing right now, so I must be anxious. So staying hydrated prevents you from having any of those physiological symptoms of not being hydrated enough, which prevents your brain from misinterpreting those physiological symptoms.
Well, I have to say, with the exercise, I agree. Even before the pandemic, I was starting to get back to exercise more. But recently, the gym that I go to has been making sure they're very safe and social distancing. And even just going the 2 days a week that I'm going, I go in the mornings just because I feel like I can start my day off with exercise. I feel like I'm charged for the day and recharged for the day. It does make a difference. I realize that, and when I can't get to the gym, I do try to exercise walking, even in the midst of the pandemic here in New York, when it was really, really bad, March, April, May. I realized even just taking an hour out to walk, around Central Park, just walking around the area in the neighborhood, it does sort of release, it makes you feel better. It releases sort of, I guess, endorphins or something. But I realized that it felt better. And at that time, especially, it was so dark and everything was, happening. But I would come back and feel so good and would look forward to it.
Yes.
Yeah. But so how can artists and creatives make sure to balance their mental health in their career? I want to say before I go on, just that I feel that the entertainment and theater profession is probably one of the most stressful and demanding careers. I mean, obviously there are many, but I think especially being people who are performers and who work in the creative scene behind the scenes is very demanding and stressful. How can we balance our health and also a career? And how do we do that in workplaces that sometimes are very stressful and are overwhelming?
Yeah, there definitely are particular stressors to being an artist or working, in the theater. And please share other experiences that you have or other things that you've noticed. But what I've seen anecdotally and actually from research is a couple of things. One is that people who are actors in the theater, actually, this is research, tend to be more empathic. And so they're more sponges for the world. Now, that probably makes people better able to be good actors, but can make, kind of living through this overwhelmingly difficult time for humanity, that's that much more trying. Also, the financial stress, right? If we don't have any of us, we don't have financial stability. That's one of the number one stressors for anybody. And so then you're in a career where there's not, I won't say there's not a constant paycheck, but you might have a contract for a year with a show if you're lucky, and that's great. And then you might have you're doing things here and there in between, and the rejection is the other thing too. So you go on like 100 job interviews and you maybe get one job for that. I think in terms of your specifically your question about working in toxic environments, potentially toxic or high stress environments,
right?
Most important thing is to know what your boundaries are, to have clarity about that, and to you not be afraid to hold those. You can do that assertively without having to be aggressive about it, because that's the fear. It's like, I don't want to, people are afraid of coming across as being mean or aggressive or whatever. But if something is over the line for you, they're not going to know that unless you say it. And if they can't respect that, then you can choose if that's a place you want to continue in, and balance that with, the all the other factors you have to think about.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And that's something that I am working on and getting better with. Thankfully, the job that is on hold because of the pandemic, but that I'm in now before the pandemic happened, which hopefully I will return to, is I love and has been great. But I've been in some jobs prior to that were sort of like that and toxic. And it's tough to be assertive while not, being aggressive or not being too passive. I sometimes have had the issue of my anxiety has been like, well, I don't want to say something and and I don't want to look like that person. I don't want to seem like I'm causing problems. But more and more as I have gotten a little bit older and, realize that like you have to have boundaries and you have to be assertive and let people know. Otherwise, not only will they walk all over you, but you also mental wise and health, mentally you'll feel better that, that it's out there. I tend to sometimes think people are mind readers and then, not always, knowing that. So I think that's, it's taken work, but I do agree that the assertive is important for sure. And on that sort of same note, with that is, how do we continue to break the stigma of mental health and talking about how we feel? This is something for me that is so important that day in and day out, I am a constant cheerleader, constant sort of advocate for therapy, for mental health. My opinion, if I ran the world, was I would think everyone should talk to a mental health professional. I think that the world would be a better place, even to just have somebody to talk to. But I do see that we are getting there slowly, where people are starting to talk openly about how they feel and mental health and the importance of that. But how can we continue that and to not make people feel ostracized, that, that they have something wrong with them? I know I have felt that, and many have, where, you talk about, oh, my therapist told me, or, oh, I learned this, or, and you say to people, look at you like you have 5 heads and that you're cursed,
Right. It's funny, in New York, the culture around therapy is actually much better, where it's people can say, well, my therapist said, I had just had a great session with my therapist, and that's kind of the unspoken social mores around that is that's kind of appropriate discussion, and to acknowledge. Outside of New York and San Francisco, it's much more taboo. So that's, I think that's a good thing in New York culturally, is that's, but like everybody just talks about their therapist, and lots of people have therapists. It's particularly in the entertainment, in the theater, community. I've heard a lot from people that there's a fear that if they talk about, if they do have a diagnosis that could impact their work, intermittently, they're afraid to share that because they're afraid, right, that producers, directors, whatever, are just gonna be like, I don't, that just sounds like, problem or trouble. I don't want to deal with that. And it does seem like that definitely could happen, like in a more toxic, I think, workspace. It does seem like as people are starting to be more open about that is decreasing. Yeah. So I think, to answer your question, I think there's 2 angles to think about that. How you can lead by example, for yourself, your own experiences, and sharing, like, sometimes I feel really anxious. So I, whatever, like advocating for yourself. So I might have to leave the room to go, do some deep breathing in my own space. And then I will come right back and keep working, to just, own it. And then also to support other people when they, if they share something like that, and, say, what can I do to support you? And, just having those conversations and talking about it matters so much. Words, bringing it out into the light just makes it have so much less weight.
Yeah.
Right. The darkness is where it festers and where it has power.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I wonder, I guess maybe people are stuck in their old ways, but I wonder why sort of the stigma has even been there, and why, people, as you said, sort of outside, I guess, of the New York, San Francisco area, look at you speaking about your mental health or speaking about a therapist, or, hey, this is what I need to do to sort of, remove myself from the situation for a second, but then back, and why it's such a stigma to begin with. And I wonder if, I think Broadway has done a good job. We get into this a little later on. I think Broadway has done a good job with some of their shows that has talked about mental health, made that sort of the forefront. But I would like to see it more, I think, in more media, in the sense of like more shows and more TV. And do you think that people just sort of become accustomed to thinking that, it's not normal? And I don't use that word lightly. I hate the word normal, but that it's just a stigma. And
well, without going too deep into the history of it, we have a long history in this country of really truly ostracizing mental illness. So people didn't want to have anything to do with the others, the people we were othering and putting in, what we called insane asylums. Right. We didn't want to have anything to do with that. So nobody, you just keep on your business. And so that's where we came from, so to even be at a point where people can, talk about what they deal with it's coming such a far way, but that's from whence we came. And really separating out people, from, so we do it still. I mean, if you look at how we treat people who do not have homes and are lots of those folks are dealing with some form of mental illness, whether that is, an addiction or a mood disorder or something like that. So we still are guilty of othering people and not treating them as humans. They are all of us. We are them, and they are us. So, I think that, I think that's where it comes from. And I think, where it's fear. It's fear.
So I meant to ask you this at the top of the show, but I want to make sure I get to it. You're known as the Dr. Drama, and you run drdrama.com. Tell me a little bit about the inspiration and creation for Dr. Drama. I know you love theater, and that's one of the things I love about you, but where did the idea come from to start Dr. Drama?
So, I was just going about my business, like being a theater fan, or theater queen. Somebody told me that, instead of theater nerd, they dubbed it theater queen, being a theater queen. And I like that. But going to shows locally, Broadway, blah, blah, everything I could consume. Cast albums, and and going along with my career in psychology. And it came a point in my career, I feel like, I don't know if this gets talked about, I don't remember being warned about this, but I hit a mid-career point where I was like, okay, that learning curve isn't there anymore. The challenge is there, but not in a way where it's part of a learning curve. And I wanted something that was fueling, because that learning curve can be so fueling and exciting and thrilling and fulfilling. And again, the work still is, and it matters, but it wasn't the same. So it really came to me in an epiphany that, why don't you do something with theater? I mean, I didn't see anybody, from my background of a psychologist, in a consistent basis talking about theater, and the overlap is immense. I mean, you could take any show. I could take any show, and we could analyze it.
Right.
Right. Even shows that seem like they're like absurdist humor, like Spam-A-Lot, or Book of Mormon. We could break that down and talk about it in terms of psychology. Never mind the shows where it's kind of more spot on, like Next to Normal or Dear Evan Hansen. Right. So it just was like a strike of lightning, like go do this. And I didn't know where to start or what to do. I asked some people, for some insight, and I started, and it's taken me in directions I couldn't have anticipated, but I've allowed it to go there to be what it needed to be. Mm-hmm. And it's just been really fulfilling to bring the conversation about mental health to kind of the theater fandom, who really want to talk about it,
Right.
really want to talk about mental health, and to kind of bring my passion for theater and my knowledge of psychology, and kind of elucidate maybe some aspects of life and of theater, that maybe it's just that's the angle that I have to offer.
Right.
So yeah, it's been so awesome.
Yeah, it has. You've talked to some wonderful people on your website, and for those, I have it here. For those who are interested, you can go to the www.drdrama.com. You have talked to some great people, including Jeremy Jordan and a few other Broadway stars. But this is a great segue because you actually started on your Instagram called the Mental Health Series, and I am loving that you are doing that you are creating a series that's so available to people, Instagram, and you've spoken to some incredible people, Tracy Toms, Anthony Rapp, so many people, I'm trying to remember also. You've spoken to wonderful, wonderful people. And I guess for me, is there one thing that you've noticed from your guests over the years and from the series that they have in common in the sense of mental health, or what you've seen in common from them being performers or creatives? Is there sort of I don't say a trend, but is there something that you see that it seems that they all either struggle with or they all come together with and sort of share in that sense?
Yeah. And thank you. Yeah, that musicals and mental health series, although musicals, it's, sometimes it's not people who are necessarily in musicals, but it's people theater related or performance related. Like I've had a lot of drag artists on, and those have been some of my favorite conversations, talking about, about the meaning of drag and fandoms, and how fandoms can be really toxic, and it's, blah, blah, like all these amazing conversations. But, I think the one thing I could say I've heard in some way, shape, or form from everybody is imposter syndrome. So, I've been lucky, and that was my offering for this time. The pandemic started, we just kind of shut everything down. I think it was like 13th. And again, it was an epiphany. Like you want to be helpful and do something. And that was what I can offer, is like hosting conversations about mental health through, that of musical theater. And because people aren't working, a lot of people were available to say yes. And it was something they wanted to talk about. Right. So, I've been lucky enough to have these conversations with Tony Award winners, and from people starting out, who are newer in the field, to people, with like 10 shows under their belt, to people who have won Tony Awards. Yeah. And they all talk about not feeling adequate at times. So I love that, because, I'll have a lot of younger people watching the series, and I think that they think that once you reach a certain, this is why these conversations matter, right? Because I think people are fed this line or this belief that once you reach a certain echelon, you will feel like you're enough. And it is not an outside-in job. It's an inside-out. And we all struggle with it at times. I do too. Sometimes I've been doing this, clinical psychology for 15 years. And sometimes I still sit in the room with someone, or virtually in the room, and I'm like, oh my gosh, who am I to be listening to people's deepest, darkest thoughts? Oh gosh, maybe they're going to find out that I don't really know what I'm talking about, Right. Everybody has that. It's, learning how to talk back to that voice is what matters. That's the change. The change isn't not feeling inadequate at times. Everybody does. And it doesn't matter if you have a Tony Award on your shelf.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that. And especially, I think that is something we've seen people be more open with during this pandemic, is their issues and struggles. And I think that, as you mentioned, the imposter syndrome, it's something we all deal with. Even me, I feel that way a lot with some of what I do. And it's tough. And I can only imagine these people who have had a, illustrious career and continue to just, to feel that way. And I think it's important to talk about, because as you said, people think, or younger generations think, once you achieve that success, once you've been on Broadway or you've won the award that, it's sort of smooth sailing, but it's hard. And it's hard. I mean, I've found imposter syndrome to be real. And it's been tough because at times, you see people, oh, you want to be just like them. You want to be just like them. And it's tough to see sometimes people's career and say, well, I'm not doing enough, or what am I doing? I haven't done this, and I haven't, and you realize that you are sort of making your own path. You're forging your own say. And what I've learned is, I say, for me, I have people that are inspirations, but I will never be like any of these people in a good way, because I'm myself, and I admire these people, I look up to these people, but I will never do that, and I never be a carbon copy of that. And it's been tough because you especially, I think social media perpetuates it, where you see people excelling and all these different things, and you stop and you say, well, I want to be just like them, and I'm not doing enough. I'm not participating enough. I'm not involved enough. And you sometimes you find that you aren't yourself, and you end up becoming someone else. And it's very easy to fall into. I've noticed on my end.
Yeah. It really is. And, I've found in doing this work for Dr. Drama, that definitely brings it up more, because it's new, it's novel territory, right? So when you're trying something new, you're stretching yourself, that definitely can bring it up more. I think artists are constantly doing that. Creative people are constantly doing that. That's new for me. I'm a scientist. Like, there's a prescribed way to do things, and like you have to master that prescription. But this is like, there are no rules. There's no guidelines. Like, oh my gosh, who am I to ask, Ali Stroker to have a conversation on my series? That that voice, and I love using the analogy or the reference of the fates in Hadestown, constantly speaking in the ears of the characters with doubt, causing them to doubt themselves. They are voicing imposter syndrome. Who are you to challenge this man? Who are you to lead the people out of here? Right. And because he doesn't know how to answer back to them, he falls prey to those negative voices. Right. And that is his tragic flaw. And we are all susceptible to that tragic flaw. We speak back to it. My favorite retort to that voice is, why not me?
Right.
Why not me? And what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That's a good, it's such a good analogy. It's funny, Hadestown, I hope that returns. I want to see it again when it comes back real quick. I saw it right around before the Tonys, but I had gotten the last seat in the balcony, and the way that the Walter Kerr is shaped, the balcony, and I've sat in balconies and to find you, but it's so steep and it's so up there that like I had trouble seeing it. And so it was tough. I got to see the show, but it was, I want to see it again and probably sit in the mezzanine or something, be able to enjoy it a little bit more. Cause most of the show was spent like looking over the seat and trying to see what's going on, but it was a very good show,
Yeah.
So as we get into 2021, I would love to know, how do you envision the theater world moving forward, with an emphasis on mental health and inclusion? What is sort of, if your vision that you hope to see in this year, and obviously the years going forward, but as we start to bring back live performance in the theater?
Mm-hmm. Gosh, I have so many thoughts about that. The first thing I think is that, that we have to do more than, we have to be more active than just talking about tackling systemic racism. Because when we talk about mental health, we have to include, systemic issues that are because oppression and racism and transphobia cause harm to people's mental health. And we have a responsibility to be doing something about it. We cannot return and keep things the way that they are. We have to. We cannot be, no longer can we claim ignorance. We have to be part of making it so that it is not causing further trauma as much as we can. How can we talk about mental health and be part of a system that is traumatizing people?
Right.
So that's my, the first thought that I have to that. I would love to see companies, shows, theater institutions do more to support the mental health of their cast and crew.
Mhm.
Specifically for cast, I think it's important actually to have to continue more to incorporate intimacy directors, because you will have a better chance of not re-traumatizing people. 1 in 4 people in the United States have been sexually assaulted or abused. So chances are 25% of your cast are survivors.
Mhm.
And so if you're not ensuring that touch, it doesn't even have to be sexual, any touch,
Right.
any close physical closeness feels safe and the person feels like they have control in that situation. If you're not doing that, then you are, causing further harm. That I think that's an important piece. I think too about the grog of 8 shows a week. I've heard a lot from people how harmful that is. Yes, they're Olympic athletes of the stage. Yes,
Right.
yes. And there is this, value of never missing a show, which I don't know if I agree with. I don't think I agree with it. I think, I'm not saying the people, I'm saying the ethic, that moral of like,
Right.
that you are a better actor if you never miss a show.
Mhm.
I think that causes harm, and I think it was a very big deal when the lovely, Patty Murin wrote a piece after she had to call out from the show because she had a panic attack, and she wrote about, she did not let it stay in the dark. She said, I called out of the show because I had a panic attack, and we need to talk about mental health.
Yes.
So to that end, yes, to that end, I think people who have a platform and feel comfortable talking about it, people continuing to be, more open talking about mental health. Even Eva Noblezada has been a rock star in that area. She is just talking about mental health left and right, and I applaud that.
Oh, I'll have to look and read more into that, because I love that. I will love when performers are talking about it. So I'll have to dig deep in that, because I would love to hear what she has to say. And we mentioned that about Patty Murin. I remember when that came out, and in a way, I mean, I'm not a performer, but it felt like such a relief to see her talk about that. And it's a shame that it had to feel like a relief. Oh, it's been so bogged up, you can't talk about it, but it felt such a relief to see someone who is in a leading role, let alone in a Disney, mega hit, and be so honest and raw. And it made me really hope that the industry take a look and realize that, listen, these performers are people too, these leads, these casts, these ensembles, these, are people too. And I love that the conversation got sort of continued to get started and went deeper when she said it. It's important. And I think it's superficial to think that, and it is easy to get wrapped up in this, to think like, oh, they have the perfect life. They're not, they don't have feelings. They don't have emotions. And so I thought that was so important that she did that. And, you mentioned about an intimacy coach. I'm curious, do you feel that shows should have also sort of a psychologist coach, or someone that is a mental wellness professional on hand, that aside from just an intimacy coach? I mean, we're talking about mental health. I think it would be important. I don't know, while I'm learning more of how the behind the scenes works, I think it would be important to have a professional who is a psychologist on hand for, check-ins, for, daily sort of, whether it's mindfulness activities, but just to have a resident mental health person. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that would be amazing, kind of in the PT model. I mean, shows will, provide for the physical health of their performers, right? But not the mental health of their performers, their bodies and not their minds. And I think that would be incredible to kind of, use that model and have, not necessarily to be everybody's everybody's individual therapist, because that would actually be unethical for a psychologist to function in that way, because it would be dual relationships. But to be, like you said, kind of a mental health check-in or coach or first aid, so if someone's like, I'm having this problem and I don't know if it's a mental health problem, I don't know what to do about it, to be able to figure that out and say, okay, yeah, you would do well to talk with a therapist. Here's a list of names, that take, your union insurance, or, here's some tools that you can use to help deal with that. Or, you should go rule out a medical cause of this and, go see your PCP.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
I do too. I got thinking about it. Actually the other day I was, researching and writing up questions, and I thought about it. And you mentioned the PT aspect. Yeah, I do know there's a lot of shows that, they provide the PT, they give you a membership to the gym, they make sure but I think to have, as we return in this sort of new atmosphere, I think it's important. And I think it would be an overall betterment of the show. I think you would see more progress, more, I think the health of the show all around, I think would be beneficial to have something like that. And I hope we can see that for sure. I would love to get your thoughts on how Broadway recently has, I think, done a good job of bringing sort of mental health to the forefront. Over the last, I guess we could say 10 years, we've seen shows like Next to Normal, recently Dear Evan Hansen, Jagged Little Pill, that have really sort of touched on the mental health aspect. Do you feel that Broadway has done good with this? Do you feel that it's been commercialized? For me, I just on my end, it's been nice to see, while the big ritzy ditzy family musicals are wonderful, I think it's, for me, theater is about art and, telling a story. And I think seeing these shows that have put a forefront on mental health, Next to Normal, I think is important and has made me feel good to see. But what do you feel about it? How have you interpreted that?
I mean, absolutely. Yeah. I think that Broadway and theater in general are doing a better job with that. But definitely Broadway, if you look at the kind of the history of musicals about mental health, you look at the 60s and you see a show like Promises, Promises, where, not to take anything away from the greatness of that show, but kind of the book aspects around, the lead character's suicide attempt are they're not very sophisticated understanding of psychology, and it's not, I think in that way not very necessarily serving the topic very well. It seems a little out of the blue, and and almost like she's hysterical, which is an old trope, an old misogynist trope to boot. Right. And then you fast forward to current day, the last like 20 or so years. And I would also include a show like Grey Gardens in that grouping, which is it's not as, maybe not quite as clearly about mental health as Dear Evan Hansen, but it is so about mental health, right? About hoarding and codependency and the levels of denial, it's such a great show. Anyway, to see like us come to such a greater point of sophistication in our understanding, I think those shows, what I hope as an audience member and a psychologist is that those shows open up conversations. And I say this in a way, when I talk about Dear Evan Hansen, and I know people have criticisms of that show, and how it handled the topic of mental health. And I think those positions are completely legitimate. My perspective is that it is not meant to be a documentary or an educational video. And I think that a show's responsibility is to open up the conversations in a meaningful way, in a way that does not abuse the topic to dramatize what's happening, in a way that is emotionally honest, and to provide resources and to sometimes host conversations around that. And I, a show like Dear Evan Hansen has done that to boot. They've also raised money for mental health causes. So that's what I think we're seeing really great progress in that area, and I'm excited about what we've seen in the last 20 years.
And I'm excited for what's to come, because I do feel that, people often have said recently that these next 10 years will be the roaring 20s, and, things will, people will want to get out and travel. And I hope that includes seeing theater, but I am excited to see the art that's going to be created. I think during this time we will, the art that people are creating, that I think will take on new meaning. I hope to see sort of more conversational pieces in the theater that can start sort of the conversations about mental health, about well-being. And I'm very excited, because it's, while theater is obviously an escape, it's also real life too. And I think, for instance, one of the shows for me that in this last year that really spoke to me was The Inheritance. Did you get a chance to see that?
I did not.
It was wonderful. It was it was the first show that I ever saw more than I saw it about 2.5 times. It would have been a full 3. Unfortunately, I didn't. The last time I would see the second part, we were already closed down. But as being a male who identifies as being gay, it was a show that touched so many aspects, that focused on so many things from that I saw myself in each character, and dealt with sort of the stigmas that gay men deal with, and the attitudes that happen. And it was beautifully written by the wonderful Matthew Lopez. And I thought the way that a lot of musicals have spoken to me, a lot of shows, but I thought the way that spoke to me was something that I want to see more of. I want to see sort of more shows that get you to think and get you to sort of escape, but also give you the feeling of I can relate to that. And I think it makes you more invested in a show.
Yeah. That emotional honesty, right? I'm not as much of a I'm such a musical theater queen. That's like where my heart is. But right. I love live theater, and and there are definitely plays that I've seen that I really love. Proof comes to mind. That really is dealing with the topic also of mental health and mental illness, and creativity. Mm-hmm. So a show like The Inheritance, a show like Proof, that opens up conversations about, about our inner lives. It's always a good thing. And there will be people who see the shows and never talk about them again, right? That's just some people, to quote Sondheim. But for other people, it does open up the conversation and get us to help us. It's a tool for helping us better understand ourselves. And that's why I respect actors a lot, because I feel like they are kind of, like rabbis of the heart, or preachers of the heart, where it's a calling, and it's an act of service. Yes, they love to do it. Yes, they're getting paid for it, but it's an act of service as well. They are going through the most emotions and the emotional, arc on stage for us, so that we can experience it too.
Yes, I agree. Well, being the, what did you say, the theater queen that you are, I would like to know, sort of in the last year, or even last few years, what has been a favorite show of yours that you have really enjoyed?
Oh my gosh, Ryan. I love this question, because I feel like we don't talk about it as much, because it's been so hard because we've been away from live theater, but I still feel as passionately about talking about this. I'll tell you that the night Broadway reopens, if it's even like a single night, I don't know, maybe some shows more than other, first, whatever. If it's a single night, I will be at the Walter Kerr seeing Hadestown. That is where you will find me. Mm-hmm. I think, the power of mythology to help us better understand ourselves and, our human lives is obviously intense and meaningful, because we keep coming back. Look at the power of a story of an American mythology. Well, not an American mythology, a Western mythology of Star Wars, and how that is such a big part of our culture. Myths matter, and I just think that the artistic perfection. I love that. I just love that show. Six was another show that I really, really loved. I think it is, in a way, a direct descendant of Hamilton. Not because it's all about history, but it's because it's a feminist retelling of history.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the most fun 75 minutes I've ever had in the theater.
I agree. So you got to see it then before Broadway closed?
Not on Broadway. The American Repertory Theater is my home theater, and I always get a season subscription there, which is very affordable. I love regional theater, and so I saw it there a few times.
They do some great things there. Yeah, I loved Six. I was I was very impressed too. The generation that really seems to love it too is the younger kids, the teeny boppers, as we like to call them. I was very impressed with with that, and I do think you mentioned about Hamilton. I think that could be the next Hamilton, or sort of on that level, just because it's been it's a phenomenon. Everyone I've talked to, it's just been up in arms in the best way about it. Yeah,
and the way that they wrote. These lines that have triple meanings, that are a reference to history, a reference to modern culture, and also a double entendre, is very like Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yes.
But they're doing their own thing. I'm not saying they're at all. They are made their own thing, but it definitely is like, oh my gosh, it's beyond clever.
It is
absolutely simple. I like the line that blows me away in Six is when Anna of Cleves says, okay, ladies, let's get in Reformation, right? So it's the Reformation of the church. It's an allusion to Beyonce, okay, ladies, let's get in formation. Yes. And, and talking about like, ladies, let's gather together and like get in line together.
Yes.
The first time I heard that line, I think I went absolutely bananas. I was like, did they just do that? They did that.
And it's so powerful too. I mean, it's such after I saw that, one of my quarantine binges that I've watched was The Tudors, which used to be on, I think, Showtime, which was about King Henry VIII and his 6 wives. And it was a great series. I learned more about the wives. And after watching that, I realized even more the message of Six and the empowerment and these 6 women that, were dealing with a terrible, terrible person. And just, amazing to see Six as it is, and to see like what these women really could have been like if they all had one day met. And now we can see that in a musical form, and just the diversity, the feminism aspect. It makes me happy. For me, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, the narrative power of Henry never being a character on stage, only reference, that in and of itself. I took my daughters to see it, and they're at an age where any sexual innuendos go completely over their head. So it's kind of their perfect age. And it felt so meaningful for them to see a story that was, co-written by a woman, and every single person on stage is female identifying. Yes. Like where else could I take them to see something like that?
Exactly. For me, one of my favorites these sort of last few years has been, musical wise, Come From Away. That has been my show that I saw it 3 times before Broadway shut down. And it's been one of those shows that, depending what comes back first, that's going to be a show for me. The message, the theme, the beauty of, also the messaging of, we all come from away. We all are sort of come from awayers in our own mind. That's show to me, that and the Inheritance. And you were talking earlier about plays and stuff. I'm a musical guy through and through. I've always been like a musical person. And it wasn't until I saw Angels in America 3 years ago now, I guess in 2018, that really sort of, my palette changed a little bit to actually enjoy plays. And now I enjoy seeing both. But Angels in America and Inheritance both were 2 plays that really just touched me to the core. And Come From Away is such a feel-good, another show that's only 75, 80 minutes, no intermission. And is just a feel-good musical. It has such a great message.
Yeah, I think, you know, it is, and it is the, you know, if the opposite of war is in peace is creation, it's kind of like it's the opposite of terrorism.
Right.
You know, it's humanity. It's about humanity. I think it's a beautiful piece, and I'm so glad with the news that we'll get to see that show from home, that more people get to experience it. I think we need that show now more than ever. The other show that I absolutely was and will forever be obsessed with is the revival of Once on This Island. Ooh, I could cry just thinking about it. I think that the gods blessed that production, and the people involved with it really made theatrical magic. There's a handful of experiences I've had in the theater. I think people can relate to this, where your DNA is forever changed. And that show shifted my DNA forever. Shout out to Camille Brown's choreography. I thought it was sublime. I thought it was perfection in being in the circle and the square and having it be so visceral, so powerful for that particular show, and the way they brought in the elements, and every single person in that cast. And again, everybody. Kenita Miller stole my heart singing T Moon, and forever owns a piece of my heart.
Yes. And that album I tell you, this T Moon is one that the song, some of those songs, as you say, I could listen to and cry, because it is just, the original is great. I love the original, but the revival, the way that the revival, the way they did the sounding, the way that it is just, there was something so powerful. And I got a chance to see the revival as well. And I agree, it was beautiful, beautiful show. And just, yeah, I love that.
That show has like a little sand. It's like a little portion of my heart. It's like this little, it's got sand, and that set is just living on my heart, and it's going to be there forever.
I love that. Well, as we get ready to wrap up here, I always like to open the floor. Is there anything that you would like to mention or speak about, something that I didn't maybe bring up or forgot to mention, that you would like to, leave us with or speak about? The floor is yours, and I want to make sure I hit everything. And I like to have people have the moment if I didn't get anything that they wanted to talk about.
I mean, your questions really were wonderful, and it was a wonderful conversation. And I could talk about this for hours. So there's always something more I could say. And I guess the thing that comes to mind is that, I want people to know that it's important. It's so important to honor your feelings. That feelings are not right or wrong. They just are. Actions can be better, worse, healthier, or less healthy. But your emotions are never wrong. They're there for a reason. So listen to them and honor them. They are valid, and they matter. And so I guess that would be kind of the parting words that I would love to give to people. We all need a reminder of that, even if it's something you've heard before.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I just want to leave this with people too, that, I'm always open and honest. And I said it sort of in the beginning, but I am a proponent of mental health. I see a therapist, I see a psychiatrist, and I encourage anyone out there, to see someone if they are, dealing with mental health issues, especially this time. And it's saved my life, and it has done wonders for me. And I am just, I think it's important to talk about, and please, nobody feel ashamed about who you are, and, talking about, mental health. If you have to see someone, I always say it's better to talk to somebody than not. And there's so many great resources out there. And I hope, people can find what they are looking for, because it's, as I said, I sometimes would be like, I could be like the poster child for therapy, because I talk about it all the time, and I find myself, and I guess it's living in the New York area, saying, oh yeah, well, my therapist said, or, oh yeah, and just sort of gotten to a point where I talk about it so nonchalantly that you don't even realize anymore that it's, there's been times where you say it and people are like, oh, but you say it so freely now that it's nice to say. And I think it helps people. That's just my sort of opinion, but
it does. Yeah.
And before we go, where can we keep up with you? Where can we follow you?
Yeah. So yes, my the website drdrama.com. I am most active on Twitter and Instagram, and most interactive there. So on both those mediums, I am at the.com, THEDRDRAMA. The Musicals and Mental Health series is continuing for now. I think we might hit a year, and then we'll see kind of what happens with it. But I have an episode every week, and love to have those be interactive, and you know, with people watching live.
Yeah.
So and you can always find who's going to be on next on Instagram.
Yeah, I love that those are interactives, and I love that you interact with the people who are on. I think that's wonderful. So, you know, well, Alisa, thank you so much for talking with me, for doing this. I always love talking with you, and I miss seeing your beautiful face in person, and I look forward to being able to give you a big hug in the future when it's safe and when you're here in the city, and you know, us talking about our love of theater and everything. And what you are doing means so much to me, to the community, and it's important, and you are making a difference. And I can't thank you enough for everything that you have done and continue to do. And you are just such a special human being.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting this conversation and inviting me. You know, we never know who we're going to touch, you know, and talking about mental health really, really matters. So thank you for having me on, and I cannot wait to be there in person, give you a hug, and share our enthusiasm for this, you know, art that we love.
Yeah, no, me neither. I cannot wait. Thank you.